is here, as well as Vice President Nikki Woodward. I'm not sure if she's here because my screen only allows me to see a certain amount of Zoom boxes. And welcome to Valerie Cole as well. And yes, Shana Tova to all our Jewish brothers and sisters who are celebrating the new year, and a happy Hispanic Heritage Month to all our brothers and sisters in the Latino community. And it is such an honor to be here. Foremost, I want to say that Wes would have loved to have joined you here this evening, but he did have a conflict. But I can assure you at your next meeting, Wes will be joining you. So, but I'm thrilled to be here because I'm a mom of 3 Montgomery County public school graduates, 3 daughters who went through K through 12 right here. And I am just so thrilled with the education, the support, everything that my girls received. And they are who they are because of all of you that made their life possible. So thank you. And I also want to say one of my daughters went on to become a public school teacher herself, but she teaches in New York City public schools. So I'm very proud of that. And I want to say also that, needless to say, I came here as an immigrant to this country, and it was the educators who taught me not just English, not just all the academics, but they taught me that I could be anything that I wanted to be. And I believe them. And so I am so grateful to be here with all of you. And I'm looking forward to the questions that you may have for me. But I can let you know that we are grateful to have the MSEA and MCEA endorsement. And all the times that I've ran in the past, I've always had MCEA support. And I am so grateful for that, whether it was as a delegate, whether it was as a, running for the 6th district, congressional district in Maryland. And now, of course, as a lieutenant governor with my friend Wes Moore. We are so humbled to be in this moment. We are so grateful for everything that you all do, particularly not just to educate, but to nurture, to empower, to always be there for our students who really are the future of our state. And I want you to all to know that we are here 100% in every way to be able to make sure that you all have the resources that you need so you can teach our students in the best way that you can. Because after all, that's why you signed up to become an educator, to be able to educate our students, right? And not to be drowned out in all the standardized testing and, the other things that come with being an educator that isn't so fun. And I know that, MCEA, I think President Martin, I read your recent press release on the 53% increase in retirement from educators and para-educators from 1 year ago versus the 21, 22 year. And, that's going to be a big issue as we move forward. How do we retain teachers? How are we going to give them the resources that they need so they feel good in the, in the space that they're in? And they don't need to have, significant parts of their days doing testing and being boxed in standardized curriculums and, spending a lot of their days doing disciplinary matters. That's not what you should be doing. You signed up to be an educator because you love teaching, and that's where your focus needs to be. So I'm proud to say that, of course, Wes and I, needless to say, we are 100% behind the blueprint and fully funding it to make sure we raise salaries for our educators and our education support professionals. And we need to reform standardized testing and making sure, from speaking to teachers across the whole campaign, across the whole state, they said that they want to be able to fund and implement restorative practices as well and seek greater share of IDEA funding from the federal government. Apparently, they were supposed to give a lot more funding, but they yet ever, met that. So there's a lot of things we need to be working on, a lot of challenges ahead of us, but you know what? There's unlimited opportunities, and we can't wait to get to work if we are honored enough to be elected as the next governor and lieutenant governor of this state. So I just want to open it up to all of you. I think, the last thing I want to do is speak at you. I want to hear from you what your biggest concerns are and learn from you.
Sure. Well, Aruna, thank you so much. And we are going to do everything in our power to make sure that you and Wes cross the finish line and are headed to Annapolis for the coming term. So we thank you for standing up. This takes courage to run, and we are there with you to make sure that you have success. There are a couple of questions that we have for you here, but also if there are questions from folks who are in the audience, if our moderators can curate some of those questions, that would be awesome as well. So first question is, what do you anticipate being your personal work portfolio as Lieutenant Governor?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. Thank you for that. And Wes and I have already talked about this. It hasn't been solidified yet, but I can let you know what, 3 areas that I'm really particularly interested in. Of course, I'm a civil engineer. That's my background, STEM, and transportation engineering is where I spent 25 years here in Montgomery County working for the local DOT. So I'd like to be able to put that on my portfolio because, again, as Wes and I traveled across the state, one of the top 3 issues that comes up every single time, whether it's in Mountain, Maryland, or the Eastern Shore, or Southern Maryland, or Baltimore City, transportation access. Transportation plays such a huge role in people's ability, not just to access, where they need to go to work, but school children who go to school, elderly who need to get to the hospital and pick up their prescriptions, individuals that need to get to the local stores to pick up food. And one thing also is that particularly it plays such an equitable, equity issue. So transportation is not just about connecting communities. It's an equity issue. It's a quality of life issue. And it's also an economic issue because if people can't get to work through no fault of their own because our transit system isn't working, then, they can't play a role in our economy, which means then they rely on social services and it just becomes this, cycle of defeat for them. So I really want to spend a great deal of my time looking into how we can make public transit work better for our, entire state. Another area that I'm deeply interested in, mental health services. Look, I grew up in a family where my father suffered from bipolar disorder, and I know how much that can impact not just the individual who deeply suffers from it, but also everyone that individual touches in their family, in their friends, and everyone they come across. And especially after what has happened in the pandemic, we know the isolation, the mental health issues that have arise. It's from the moment you're born till the moment you exit this material world. Mental health is an area that we really need to put a lot of focus on and make sure that it's not stigmatized, that it's always been in the past, that we bring out into the forefront, put sunshine on it, and know that it's every part of an individual's success. Just like you go to the doctor every year to get a physical, well, let's do a checkup from the neck up, right? That all goes hand in hand together. And we know our students are suffering as well from mental health matters. So I really want to be able to focus on that. And then finally, I'd also like to work on domestic abuse and survivors of this. I did a lot of bills when I was a delegate. Again, this is a community that's often left behind and forgotten. And yet, this plays such a huge role in individuals' lives and their ability to succeed themselves. So these are the main three areas that I'd like to focus on. But of course, there's so many other important matters as well. And who knows, I may be able to add more if my time allows me, but every issue is important. But I'm glad that we're going to have an administration and department heads that can focus on health, the environment, transportation from a broader perspective, education. All of these matters are important. But thank you for that question.
Sure. Well, and Aruna, all of those issues that you mentioned have a direct impact on our students and us as educators as well. So, very important that you would be seeking to address those. Another question for you. What do you see as at stake in this race? We hear that Wes and you are far ahead in the polls. So does this mean we can relax a little as the general election approaches?
Oh, heck no, President Martin, not at all. Are you kidding? Westmore and I are running this race like we are losing. That's how we've always done it. We work so hard in the primary. Our volunteers work the same way, everyone that joined us, and we would not be in this moment if we ever took anything for granted. Look, we know on the other side of this, this team is not just an opponent to us, they're a threat to our democracy. So the stakes couldn't be higher right now because the entire state of Maryland's democracy is on the ballot right now. And we're going to work as hard as we can to make sure that we cross that finish line on November 8th with every one of you. And we're going to be successful. I know that because we're going to work as hard as we can. Nobody works harder than Westmore. I can tell you that. This individual sends me text messages 4 a.m. because that's when he gets up and starts his days. And I don't think he goes to bed till 11 p.m. or midnight. And I'm going to work just as hard as well because there's too much at stake here. And, so that's what I'll say. But most importantly, every one of you who's joined us, please tell your friends, your family, and everyone to come out and vote. It's not just Westmore and me and the candidates that are not taking this for granted. You as voters can't take it for granted. You have to come out and vote. You got to take this personally. You got to put all your passion into it and make sure that you tell 10 people to come out and vote. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Aruna. We thank you so much for your leadership in the past. We thank you for the energy that you're putting into this campaign now. Your words are very inspiring and will motivate us to do our utmost to make sure that the Apple ballot is in voters' hands with your name and Wes's as the marquee names on the Apple ballot across the state. So, the other thing that I want to remind our members is that we need to vote in the primary. I'm sure that everyone who's on this call today voted, but 50% of us did not vote in the primary. Now, we did better than the rest of the voters in Maryland, but we can do better. So I would encourage anyone who is watching today to make sure that you are telling your colleagues it's important that you vote, whether you live in Montgomery or anywhere else in the state. Please come and vote because these elections do matter. They oftentimes are decided by a few votes. And just because the polls are saying one thing in the gubernatorial race, voter turnout matters. Voter turnout matters. And we know that the opposition has a very dedicated, passionate base. We need to be more dedicated, more passionate, and numerous in getting to the polls. We know that we are backing the people who do the most for public education, for the folks who do this work, and for the students we serve. So Aruna, thank you so much for being here tonight. We really
course.
appreciate it. And I know you're busy and have other events to go off to. So we won't hold you here, but know that we will hold you in our hearts. And we will hold those Apple ballots up for everyone to see as they go to the polls this election cycle.
Oh, thank you so much, President Martin, and thank you for your leadership as well. We are jazzed and we are looking forward to seeing all of you at the polls. Let's go make this happen. This, like you said, education is on the ballot. If we don't elect Westmore and all the Democrats up and down the ballot, the blueprint will not get funded and fully implemented, because on the other side of it, those folks don't want that. So I just want to re-emphasize that we need your vote, and thank you for everything that you do. We have your back and we're looking forward to working together with all of you.
All right. Well, best wishes, and we will see you in Annapolis in January.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye. All right. Well, as we move on, let's think about what, while we have had Aruna here, we really were happy to have her, and we're looking forward to electing Brooke Lehrman as our next comptroller, Anthony Brown as our next attorney general. We know that they all will be champions for educators and strong public education system here in Maryland. That said, for some of our elected officials, especially the current Board of Education, we are not in as good position. We know that many of you here this evening have recently reached out to members of the Board of Education to express your frustration about potential healthcare premium increases. I wanted to speak directly to all the members watching at home who are angry and concerned. You all received a message on Tuesday night regarding MCPS's callous decision to unilaterally raise healthcare premiums. This decision was approved by MCPS senior leadership and the Board of Education's Fiscal Management Committee that consists of Scott Joftis, Judy Daca, and Lynn Harris. They did not allow any input from the three unions. We learned about this after the fact. MCPS is projecting that the cost of medical care and prescription drugs is likely to increase over the next year. While this may be true, MCPS is trying to charge us more without having incurred any actual increase in their costs yet. In fact, the move to Cigna is saving MCPS millions of dollars over the life of the contract with Cigna. Their decision to raise rates came after the unions worked collaboratively with MCPS through the Joint Employee Benefits Committee to save the school system millions of dollars while maintaining comparable healthcare benefits that our members deserve. In response to the notification of rate increases, all three unions, SEIU, MCAP, and MCEA, sent a joint letter informing MCPS that we will not accept higher rates. We are awaiting a response from MCPS to schedule impact negotiations. Raising rates now is disrespectful, but without pushback from MCPS employees, the MCPS administration and the Board of Education may just do what they want. There are two actions you can take that will support educator efforts to put a stop to the nickel and diming MCPS seems so fond of as late. First, you can wear red and join us on Tuesday, October 18th at 5 p.m. for an MCEA rally at CESC. That's 850 Hungerford Drive, Tuesday, October 18th at 5 p.m. This rally will happen just before the MCEA Board of Directors meets with the MCPS Board of Education to discuss the real and ongoing issues affecting educator working conditions and student learning conditions. Second thing, you can get involved in helping oust the current Board of Education members who continue to ignore our concerns, our needs, and the impact their poor policies and decision-making have on our students. Part of our plan to win a strong contract is to make sure that we are electing candidates to the Board of Ed who actually care about educators and the students they serve. Brenda Wolf and Scott Joftis have proven time and time again that they do not care what we as educators have to say. In fact, Scott Joftis' most recent op-ed in the Bethesda magazine essentially said we should sit down, shut up, and stop raising concerns that might make the school district unattractive to job seekers. Our message for Scott is no, we will not sit quietly while politicians and poor management drive our school system into the ground. You must not continue to deny and sweep these very real problems facing our schools under the rug. Happy talk does not solve the problem. Educators across the county are crying out for support they are not getting under the current leadership. We must stop begging for what we need and move to action to elect a Board of Education members who will work with us to improve MCPS for our students and the communities we serve. We have an unprecedented opportunity to change the makeup of the school board in November by electing some real allies. And we're real fortunate tonight to have with us Valerie Cole, who is running against incumbent Board of Education member Brenda Wolf. Julie Yang is seeking to replace Scott Joftis, and Grace Rivera Oven is running for a vacant position against an extremist candidate. Val Cole is here with us to talk about why electing her to replace Brenda Wolf is an action we can take to ensure our voice is always heard at the Board of Education table. I'd like to welcome you now, Val, as a fellow educator, a board of director emeritus from MCEA, and a dear friend. Val, please tell us a little bit about your campaign and your hopes of as an incoming member of the Board of Education.
Well, and I think one thing I'm going to add to the list that you just said, Jennifer, is one of my first actions upon retiring from MCPS was to ensure that I stayed a lifelong member of MCEA and MSEA and NEA by planning and ensuring that I paid my retirement dues, which anybody can do at any part of their career. And you stay engaged in the union work, and you stay engaged in making sure that representation matters, not just when you're in the classroom, but we know that once you leave the classroom, you don't ever actually leave. It carries with you no matter wherever you go. And I think tying that together with what you just said, that's really the main reason I have for wanting to represent District 5 and all of Montgomery County on the Board of Education. I want to represent that viewpoint of what a lifetime educator has in the MCPS system in making decisions about what we're asking the MCPS system to do. Too often is this most egregious example of handling employees is at stake with the, I just, thinking about the costs that people are incurring needlessly, that the system has decided to put on all staff back is just not something that's acceptable. These are the kinds of things where we need to have Julie, we need to have Grace, we need to have myself at the table in order to say, why are we doing this? Why is this being proposed? Show me where the benefit is. Show me how we've communicated and worked with partners to make sure that things are equitable, to make sure that things are happening that need to happen. I think being that voice on the board, being that advocate is really something that I think that I can bring to the table and want to bring to the table based on the experience that I have.
Well, we are so fortunate to have you
You're muted.
step up and I think I'm able to make the noise now, right? Yeah. So we are so fortunate, Val, to have you in showing such courage in stepping up for this work instead of enjoying a restful retirement. Here you are taking on a campaign and ready to serve in what is a very demanding role. So we want to thank you for that, first of all. And if I may, I have a few questions for you as well.
Sure.
Val,
I'm not taking phone calls from Westmore at 4 o'clock unless he wants me to. But I will be available if he needs me.
well, I would like to know, tell us a little bit about the value that you think you will bring as an experienced teacher of longstanding and a former board member in MCEA. What will that bring to the Board of Education?
I think that brings a balance and perspective that we don't currently have. And in my 32 years in the country, at the county have never had. We've seen a lot of people that have education backgrounds. Perhaps they've spent 1 or 2 years in the classroom and then moved up through administration, or we've seen people who are lawyers or have pursued education policy, but have never actually been in the trenches and seen what the decisions up here do to the staff and the students who are actually on the front lines. And I think knowing that we have sort of the parallel with it, and I'll go back to something that I've said before. I think in some ways, the most powerful voice that we have had for the past several years on the Board of Education has been the student member of the board. The student member of the board has a clear constituency, has a clear line of communication with the people that they are representing, and advocates and works within both their constituency and the broader constituency in order to advance the student perspective. And I think what we do need to have on the board is we need to have somebody who has that practical classroom experience and has that constituency outreach to educators directly, not just perhaps some specially selected educators for a work group of a predetermined nature that is too often the course in MCPS, but really can outreach and speak to educators across the county in all different kinds of positions, whether they're school-based, whether they're in central office, whether they're itinerant. You want somebody who can talk to people and be able to bring their concerns and their experiences to any decision that's in front of the board, whether we're talking budget, whether we're talking policy, whether we're talking building connections with the community. That kind of representation matters. Representation matters. And I think that that's really a skill set, and thankfully has been my experiences professionally that I've had that I'm very grateful to have to be able to continue on with in this manner. And while I appreciate the fact that, everybody that runs for public service, and maybe this is my elementary background, right? You always want the best, to expect the best for everyone and think that everybody is operating from the best motives. As an elementary person, I honor the fact that people that have run and have been elected have wanted to do due diligence in however they have perceived it. But I think what we can all clearly see is their actions have really not served everyone. There has not been equity, and there has not been honor to collaboration. And that's something that I think we need to have on the board. But a board that is directing a system must be collaborative and must direct the system to be collaborative, and not just let the system kind of system itself, but really guide the practices of what that senior level administration is doing.
Yes, well, we certainly have experienced a disconnect between what we think of as collaboration and what MCPS labels as collaboration in recent years, where we see it as an opportunity for partnership and power sharing. We too often have seen MCPS treat us more as an afterthought, and there's been a gesture toward obtaining feedback from us, but then not necessarily any real adoption of the solutions that we propose or the changes that we seek. So,
and Jennifer, we also see that reflected in how MCPS is treating parent voice.
yes.
So the fact that, some people might say, oh, it's just the teachers complaining. Certainly the actions that have taken place on the board with regards to communication after incidents at Bethesda Chevy Chase and at Magruder, and that lack of continuous and ongoing active engagement It's not just something that MCPS is doing with its employees, it's doing it with our community. And so when you have an administration and you have a body of oversight, neither of whom is really recognizing and honoring the fact that you need to do better, instead of just saying we're doing better, but you actually need to put that into practice. It's time for change.
So tell us what you see as top issues affecting educators and by extension students. I think that we all have some sense of what those are, but I'm interested what your ranking would be, what the priorities are that you see that would need to be addressed should you be elected to the Board of Education.
Well, for me, and a little bit of, that secret policy wonk kind of thing. I love, as much as I hate to admit it, I love using data. I really do, as long as it's good data. And I think one of the things we have to do is use what we know about student need and program need and actually dive into the budget and make sure that our budget that's being proposed in December actually reflects meeting the needs of our students as directly as possible and meets the needs of all of our employees, our educators, our support staff, everyone that comes through MCPS. And that means taking a look at the kinds of things where there may be a perfectly great program that we have a contract for. However, if we haven't looked to see whether or not we can produce that same kind of work in-house, then why are we contracting that out? So I think that there's that fiscal responsibility, particularly when you look at these costs that MCPS is trying to pass on this week. If we can go into the budget and say, well, no, here's our savings here. So let's get rid of that program that you're just proposing. I think that's a big piece that takes a lot of mental pain out of people's pocketbooks. And I think that that's a responsibility that the board has to have, that due diligence to fiscal responsibility. I think my next sort of priority, when MCPS talks about mental health, but when we know for years we are not paying attention to what the ratio of counselor to student numbers are, and we are grossly and have been grossly out of whack on that, then we can't just talk about hiring some social workers and thinking that that's okay. We can't just talk about, oh, but we're going to do restorative justice and think that because a program exists on paper, that that's enough. For the Board of Education to have a priority, it must be funding positions, again, that speak to what Aruna was talking about, that mental health piece. And we need to make sure that it's hitting not just students in high school, which is a great place to be able to hit those kids with supports that they need in terms of wellness centers. But if we're not making a priority out of our youngest children, if we're not doing that same thing for our students starting in pre-K, then we're not giving them a foundation of mental health and well-being. So that whole social emotional piece has to really be something that the board focuses on in a very practical, real, and transparent way for people to be able to see. And then I think the third piece is that ownership of communication, that as the board is doing their job and making these decisions and having these committee meetings and these votes, that there is much more directed public outreach, that there is an opportunity for touching various parts of our community at various times, not just having a meeting at 1 o'clock in an afternoon that doesn't have translation or hasn't allowed people to participate. We have to make sure that the community is engaged, the larger community is engaged, and it is engaged not in a drive-by, but in a very fruitful, beneficial way. Thinking back to what Aruna talked about as being a parent of Montgomery County students. And I was a parent of Montgomery County students as well as a teacher. And knowing that when you send your children off to school, but if I have an expertise, I'm able to bring that to the table. We have so many parents in a variety of experiences that can really add to our understanding, whether we're talking about policies that support our LGBTQ questioning students, or it supports our students that are experiencing challenges with their mental health and their sense of well-being, or if we're talking about our students that are food insecure, parents that have ideas on how to, help us make our policies real and not reactive, but proactive. That's what I see as something that, for me, is another sort of touch point that I would like to work on, starting right at the beginning of being elected in.
Well, these are all very important areas to be seeking to improve MCPS, and I think your level of depth of understanding of all of those issues make you, really a fine candidate for this, and build our enthusiasm for helping you across the finish line. We are really so pleased that you earned a top place when the votes came in, and that you really were neck and neck with Ms. Wolf the entire time during the primary. And we're looking forward to being able to bring you, the votes that are needed as you campaign so vigorously in the remaining weeks. We are thrilled to be able to support you, Julie Yang and Grace Rivera Oven, for seats on the board. But, let's say you all are able to earn a spot. And as I say, we are going to do our utmost to make sure that you do. Given that 5 members of the Board of Ed will be incumbents, granted one will be a student, that still means that a majority are going to be incumbents on the board who you have not worked with as a peer before. How do you plan to build coalitions with members of the Board of Ed when you take office in order to effect changes that we seek?
I think one of the great things about the people that are currently on the board, and that would be Shebra and Rebecca and Lynn, who are on the board, that while there may have been some things that we could certainly disagree about, I'll go back to what I said before. I attribute to everybody the best of intentions. So I think when you come to the table, and you may have original disagreements as you begin discussions, or you start to open up a table for making points and having that, honest dialogue, as long as people understand that I may disagree, but I need to understand why you believe that. And I think that's something that in the classrooms we do all the time. That's just part of our effective questioning and going back and forth with students. And I think, that's respectful also with adults. And I've seen, I've seen Julie. I know that Julie knows that practice. I know that Lynn is an educator in her time in the classroom knows that. And I think that that's something that certainly Carla, through her experience, working at Montgomery College and working with students in that way. So I think when we can build that professional courtesy and respect, because we all understand what's at stake if we don't improve everything that's currently going on, then once you have that basis, a foundation of a relationship, moving forward, I think is may not always be easy, but it certainly is something that is doable, and is doable in a way that's respectful and honest, without having any sort of other, guidelines of wanting to be elected to the Board of Education because you see it as a stepping stone to county council, or you don't want to have to decide something because it may hurt you in the long run politically. Knowing that if we're electing a board that's saying every single person that is asking for your vote because this job is important. Getting this right for the kids is important. And having that as our foundation, I think helps make that bridge of working together much, much easier.
Well, again, we look forward to having you be one of those people who is, able to build the coalitions there, and also to really move the board to be more than kind of an advisory council to management, but to actually supervise the operations of MCPS in a way that has you leading rather than being led.
Which is the board's actual mission. When you look at the actual mission stated for the board, that's what's supposed to be doing.
Right.
It doesn't say to be a rubber stamp.
So, unfortunately, Val, it's likely that you will be taking office when we are still in contract negotiations. We doubt that things will wrap up swiftly given our experience with MCPS. So if contract negotiations don't conclude before you take office, and knowing that board members don't directly negotiate with our union, what role do you envision taking in that process?
I think one of the things you have to do is advise from your strengths. And that's when the board is having their closed door discussions, when they are getting their updates and their information. It means questioning the process at that time and talking about, the importance of making sure that people are being treated fairly and are being treated in a way that you maintain their employment. Because all of us know there is not a train pulling into the station full of teachers and paras and building service staff and bus drivers and everybody that makes the system work. There is not that train pulling into the station saying, oh, we're here to pick up the people that are getting off. Here's all the new people. So you have to make sure that as the board is being advised about what is going on with negotiations, that the board is setting forth to those negotiators a very clear purpose of making sure that everyone that we are employing is treated with dignity, respect, fairly, both financially and professionally. And I think that that's something that I can pretty forcefully do.
Well, your emphasis on how is the contract going to attract and retain highly qualified educators, to me, that is such an that is such an important message to put across and for the board to understand, because we know that for our students, having stability in a school of the staff is really important to their well-being. Students, young people thrive on consistency, on stability. And so many of our students, unfortunately, because of economic circumstances, may not have that at home. And so school stability, knowing the teachers and staff who are supporting them at school, that is a place where maybe the only place in their lives where they're really feeling that sense of security and safety. So
the other thing we do, Jennifer, by having strong contracts and by making sure that people have that respect, is we're sending the message to our students, much like Aruna's daughter going on and becoming an educator. We are sending that message to our students that this is a place that people want to be. This is a good environment to work in. This is a place where the work you do is valued, and you as a person are important to bringing up the next group of children that come through. So if we're making sure that our current employees are being treated respectfully, we're growing our next generation of employees, so that train that isn't pulling in, maybe we don't need that train, because it's our students that are coming back home and saying, I want to give back to the community. I want to make sure that I can continue to live and work in this community because I know I'm valued.
That is such a good point, Val, that you make about, having students see this as valuable and valued work, and seeing this as a good life to live as an educator. We would do well to grow our own. We would have a much more diverse workforce if we could attract our students into this work. And, it also, through having a good contract, we're able to then kind of help set the grounding for others in other occupations, the parents of our students, can have better wages as well, because we know where unions are strong, even the folks who aren't unionized have better wages and working conditions because of their unionized fellow citizens in the community. So We look forward to having you help us in your role should you make it to the Board of Ed. And again, we are going to do everything we can. We see that you have victory within reach. It will be a hard fought victory. I know that your opposition has, ramped things up a bit because she would like to hold on to her seat. And so we
And
know
she's
that we
very
have to
well
do
politically
things.
connected in a way that,
Yes.
I spent all my time in the classroom. I was not spending my time necessarily at a lot of different events.
Well, we know that you are campaigning hard, that your years of service have made an impression on voters, and we know the power of the Apple ballot. So we need to make sure we get that into folks' hands. Tell us, Val, what can we be doing to support you?
I think one of the things that's most important, and I know people say it all the time, is please, if you have not signed up to take on a shift for an Apple ballot, please do that, because getting that into people's hands during early voting, as well as getting that into people's hands the day of, I know in my race, when we looked at the tallies of vote results, my highest vote tallies came during early voting because people were handing out the Apple ballots, and on the primary day, again, because of the power of the ballot and people making that face-to-face connection. So that's something everybody can do. And if you can take up more than one shift, I know that would be wonderful as well. MCEA is going to be having different events. Please attend those. Please attend those, because supporting those events shows the voice that we have in the community and connects us further to the community. You can check my webpage for events. You can send donations via that webpage, because we know that campaigns run on money. So that would be something that would be gratefully appreciated. And if you want any other information, or you want to host an event, or reach out in some other way, doing some other campaigning with us, just go ahead and contact me, Valerie Cull for Board of Ed, on Facebook, or via our Gmail. And I'm happy to be in touch with you and update you that way.
Thank you so much, Val. Listen, thank you everyone who's tuned in to this month's episode. Val is so right to say that there are many ways that you can become engaged. Again, the most important thing you can do is make sure that you vote and that your colleagues vote. We have the power to turn elections if we turn out. And when we are able to elect our Apple ballot candidates, then we have more power to win the contracts that give us the working conditions that we need and the learning conditions that our students need. We look forward to seeing you at the rally on October 18th. Don't forget to send your letter to the Board of Ed Fiscal Committee if you have not done so already. We need to make sure we have the right people in positions of power so that this kind of foolishness does not happen in the future. Look for the email that was sent on Tuesday night around 7:30 p.m. To find the links that you might need to send those messages to the Board of Ed Fiscal Committee. Make sure that you wear red for Ed on Wednesdays, and we will see you back here on October 27th for the next installment of the Mix at 6. Thank you all.